Well, uh, digital employee experience or DEX it's a hot topic now in end user computing and really in I'd say any workforce in general now because employees have been empowered. Really, the pandemic showed employers that employees can leave. They can go wherever they want. There is always a need to hire skilled people in your organization, whether you're in IT, manufacturing, biotech, big tech, it doesn't matter where you work. If you have skills, you're in demand. And if you go to work every day and it takes you 10 minutes to log in, it's painful. You have to go through several layers of authentication and it's just cumbersome. You're not going to be happy as an end user, as that worker. At the same time, administrators, there's a lot of migration right now. People are job hopping or moving on to other opportunities in the IT administration side. Whether it's they've outsourced their IT and you have, contractors overseas or staff in-house. If they don't like managing it, they can go get another job. So that's really that for me, that user experience piece is the most important because if you don't have the user, you don't have a business, right? Uh, that comes up for me all the time. And
Yeah,
that's
and I think that leads to another conversation we have often, which is productivity, right? And efficiencies. Like from a user's perspective, like you mentioned, if it takes me 10 logins to get to my application, that's probably not a great experience, and it's causing me to kind of delay to actually get to my actual work completed. But of course, that has a business impact, right? That has a financial cost associated with the organization. That if their personal Wi-Fi is having problems, if their internet is having issues, if their device has to constantly be rebooted for patches and things like that, that affects productivity and actually has an impact on the bottom line, for a lot of our customers. Maybe we want to talk about that a little bit.
I productivity is it's another loaded word because we found that people working remotely could be just as or more productive. I know personally, working from home for the last few years, people have no problem booking calls back to back to back to back to back throughout the day. There's no time to walk between meetings. You just work 8, 10 hours a day, no problem. But if between every meeting you have to, like you said, do multiple logins or change systems and it's very cumbersome, that can be worse than having to commute to an office. So we have to find that balance of meeting compliance requirements, meeting, whatever the business needs are for authentication and security, but at the same time making it seamless for the user. And we've talked a lot about multi-factor authentication, and there's the pros and cons of that, the ability to do things like single sign-on and how to carry that user's identity throughout the network. And firms are really focused on that now. And we're talking about how to integrate all these systems in the back end. So if a user logs in, that session or that token can carry through seamlessly. Users like that. They don't like logging in multiple times for the same desktop or the same application.
Yeah. I think productivity of finding data with all the locations that data could potentially reside these days. It's what, back in the day, we used to call them portals, and now there's, integrations with dashboards and integrations with platforms like Microsoft Teams is a good example that's trying to consolidate all the applications and experiences and workflows that are needed for productivity. So all those are coming into play for sure. Um, I do want to drill down on digital employee experience a little bit. One thing that I hear quite often is they're kind of, is there a need for it? Of course, we'll get to that, but maybe a better understanding about what it means. Because what I hear often is some of the tools that are out there. Let's talk about like website employee interaction, or sorry, digital experience when it comes to websites. Things like, hey, I want to know that 5 items were added to the dashboard or into the cart and only 3 were purchased. Why was that? It took extra 5 seconds to go find a search, and that's why we're losing business. So I see that on the consumer website conversations, which is really where experience is starting from. But now we're talking about the employee experience. So maybe talk about some of that a little bit to say like what kind of data are they able to see and understand what that impact looks like.
Well, another big word that comes up a lot is observability. And observability is important because as an organization, being able to see the data is key. So what can we capture now? Things like How long does it take a user when they click a button? How long does it take them to actually get into their session? How long does it take that application to launch? When they are connecting into your network, what is the network performance? How many different hops do they have to make through the environment to get to the data or to the applications? And then even more abstract than that, when are users not happy? And how can you map that? And certain solutions now have self-serve where you can do something as simple as click a smiley face if you like it, or click an angry face if you don't. And that data gets passed to the IT organization and to business leaders who can see, hey, this user's not happy. What's the problem? Oh, their logon time was delayed. It took a minute to get in instead of 10 seconds like they were expecting, or their performance is poor. And they can peel back the data and see what the problem is. Sometimes it's the business's fault. Maybe they have a missed configuration. Other times it's something as simple as, oh, we see that users at home and their Wi-Fi latency is quite high. So let's call them and tell them reboot their router. And all of this feeds into keeping the employee happy, keeping them knowledgeable and aware. And if I'm told, hey, the problem is restart your router and it fixes everything, I'm happy. I'm not just angry at my keyboard. This sucks. I don't like it. So
Yeah.
that's I mean, there are so many things that you can feed into these systems. Performance of every process application. You can really dive into it if you choose
Yeah,
to.
we used to call that like the last mile, right? What are the things that IT can see within the data center, right? And has always tools to see what's going on within the data center. But as soon as it gets out to the internet, down to that endpoint, down to that person's networking, and they're in a Starbucks, you lose that visibility, you lose that observability, right? So some of the tools that are out there are definitely kind of focusing on that experience. And if you have a corporate policy that states, we are not going to support you on a Starbucks Wi-Fi, great example, right? And you're like, hey, for security purposes, for performance purposes, we can't guarantee you the same experience.
Right.
Or you're sitting by your pool super far away from your Wi-Fi versus sitting right next to it, right? Those are two different experiences, and being able to have that data from an IT. So last mile, let's call it that, right? So a lot of the same terms, right? This means different things, observability and everything else.